As always, my little disclaimer, these are just my opinions. Other recruiters may have different opinions. In no way does using these tips and techniques guarantee you will receive a job offer. I always tell my candidates, you're the quarterback on the field. You make the call. These are just my opinions. They do not guarantee you will get the job, but they may help. We're going to talk about the different types of interviews. There's phone interviews, there's video interviews, there's face-to-face interviews, final interviews, and ride-alongs. Now, with the exception of final interviews, these can be in different orders. It really depends on what the company has. Every company has a different interview process. They might start off with a video interview and then go to a phone interview. They might go phone interview, they might go video interview. They might, if you're working with a recruiter, if that recruiter's built up a relationship, you might go straight to face to face. So we're going to talk about each one of these types of interviews and help you get prepared so that you perform well in whatever interview process they've put together. Phone interviews. Phone interviews are the easiest and quickest way a manager can determine whether they want to move you forward. So typically phone interviews go 15 minutes or 30 minutes. Occasionally they'll go an hour, but they're typically 15 to 30 minutes. And usually the manager is going to want to know, why are you interested in the job? What skills do you bring to it? Are you qualified? And are you genuinely interested? And if you meet those criteria, there's a reasonably good chance you'll get moved to a face-to-face interview or a video interview or whatever their next step in the process is. This is a great opportunity to, at the end of every interview, you should ask, do you have any questions? Is there anything I can clarify? Do you have any concerns? This is the appropriate time to address those things. And it's a great opportunity to see how well you did and sometimes potentially save yourself as far as remaining in the interview process. If there's something that was a genuine miscommunication, sometimes the manager will say, hey, I need to know more about this. So make sure at the end you ask them to be move forward and what you can do to move forward in the process, and do they have any questions or concerns. Afterwards, send them a thank you. That's always a requirement, and that pretty much handles phone interviews. Remember this, the manager typically will block off half a day or an entire day to do these phone calls. So you want to bring energy and enthusiasm because this person's been on the phone all day long and some of those interviews may not have been great. So make sure you are high energy on the phone and convey enthusiasm if possible. Typical questions you'll get on a phone interview are, why are you interested in our company? Why are you leaving your current company? Now, this is common sense, but make sure that you convey that you are running to their awesome opportunity, and don't emphasize that you're running away from your current where you're currently working. Why would you be a good fit for this position? That's where your research on the skills that are involved with this position comes into play. You can reference the job description, talk about the skills you're looking for, and then explain to them how you have those skills, or if you don't have an exact same match of where you're currently working, you can talk about transferable skills. Quite often transferable skills work fine in an interview. Explain each career switch on your resume. Be prepared to explain why you've made each career transition, and if you have any resume gaps on there, you're going to probably need to talk about those as well. So be prepared to talk about any gaps in your resume as far as employment goes. One other tip on phone interviews, and this may be pharmaceutical sales, medical device sales, industry specific, I don't know. But sometimes managers will try to talk people out of the job. And what they're looking for is, do you actually fight for the job? How genuinely interested in the job are you? So, and it catches some people off guard and really throws them for a loop. And then they're like, no, I really don't want the job. So be prepared for that. Now, it could be legitimate. It could be legitimately they don't think you're a fit, but they usually won't lead off with that. So just understand that that might happen and don't let it catch you off guard. Video interviews. We've been moving in this direction for a long time. For several years now, I've seen clients beginning to use video interviews as part of their process. Typically, in the past, what I've seen is pre-recorded videos. So it's exactly what it sounds like. In a pre-recorded video, a client will send out a little link. You click on the link, and then they'll ask you something like 4 questions. And typically, they'll give you about 3 minutes to answer each of the questions. And a lot of times, if you mess up on the first try, you can re-record for a second try, which puts a lot of pressure on you for the second try. So you want to try to get it correct the first time. So pre-recorded videos are just that. They're pre-recorded. The question scrolls across your screen, you answer it, and that's basically what you do. Obviously, the live ones are different. Now we have the technology that a lot of interviews, because of COVID-19, are being conducted over the internet live with the hiring manager. And in that case, obviously, there is no recording. You are simply talking live to the manager and going through what you would typically go through with a face-to-face interview. All right, so I'll dig into, or I'll share some ideas as far as best practices when doing video interviews on the next slide. These video interview tips really apply to both live and pre-recorded videos. First of all, dress professionally, just like you were if you were in a face-to-face interview. Had a client one time was doing a interview with a sales manager. They wanted a regional manager position. They were filling a position for a manager hiring other managers. In his on his behalf, to his credit, he decided to do the interview on vacation. He was down in Florida and he did the video interview. It was a pre-recorded video on the beach in a Hawaiian shirt. That didn't go over well. So you can never be too conservative. Throw on a shirt and tie or a nice blouse or whatever it is that you would wear to the office and dress professionally. Make sure the background is not too distracting. If you look at my background right now, I have a few awards, a couple of pictures that mean something to me that are interesting conversation pieces if I'm having a live interview. But my old background before this was a fish tank with a bunch of lizards in it running around, which were distracting, and people were always asking me what's going on in the tank. The other thing is things like pets. Right now I've got 2 Siamese cats walking around. You can't see them or hear them, but if you have a dog or a cat that likes to climb up in your lap when you are doing interviews, that may be distracting to you and it may be distracting to people on the other side of the computer. Also, if you have children, you might want to have somebody watch them for the few minutes that you are doing your interview. Keep that in mind. Don't watch yourself on the screen. Look at the camera. Make sure the lighting is correct. Maintain high energy and enthusiasm throughout the interview. Personality and charisma are very important to some clients. John Madden and Jim Cramer would do very well with the video interviews. So a lot of times on video interviews, it's difficult to convey the amount of enthusiasm and charisma you bring to the table. So you're going to have to overcompensate for that a little bit if you can. It might be worth it to have someone stand behind your computer to remind you to keep your energy up. You'll have a newfound respect for professional actors and what they have to do. Take some steps to get your energy level up. My suggestions would be coffee, an energy drink, or work on whatever gets you going. A little exercise, maybe go for a run, whatever's going to get you jazzed up and ready to go, get you charismatic and get you ready and excited so that people want to hire you. All right, I've probably not done a great job with that in these videos, but it is what it is. All right, obviously each company conducts video interviews differently, and the 2 pre-recorded videos that I've done, I received 60 seconds to read the questions and prepare my answer. Then I had 3 minutes to answer each question. Keep your answers concise and on point. Most good answers will not take the full 3 minutes. If you're going the full 3 minutes on your answers, you're probably in some trouble. It means you're talking too much, probably. They're looking for somebody who's concise, on point, makes their point, and has charisma, and dresses professionally and is professional enough to make sure that they have set aside some time and done some recording where there are no distractions. The interviewers are probably looking for well-spoken, concise answers delivered by a professionally dressed candidate with charisma and energy. If you can convey that last paragraph there, you've done pretty well in your video interview. I hope this helps. If you have questions, shoot me an email or drop me a note in the comment section. A couple final notes on video interviews. Don't treat it as a checkbox. A lot of people with the pre-recorded videos will treat them as a checkbox, and if it's part of the hiring process, consider it important, and it's going to be an important part of the hiring process. We have some clients where the majority of our candidates fall off during the pre-recorded video interview. So it's very, very important to treat it just like you would a live interview or a phone screen or any other interview that you prepare for and take seriously. So it's an important part of the process, and don't treat it as a checkbox because, like I said, I have several clients where the pre-recorded video is where the largest number of candidates fall off. So it's important that you take it seriously. The second is with live interviews that with COVID and our technology now, they are taking the place of a lot of face-to-face interviews. So be prepared to answer the typical questions you would see in a face-to-face interview. So you might want to go to my website and brush up on those types of questions that you might get in a face-to-face interview because you very well might get them in a live video interview. All right, if you have any questions, shoot me an email or drop me a message. Face-to-face interviews. At this point, if you've made it to a face-to-face interview, the manager's invested. They have set aside time, possibly set aside time to interview you in a venue like a hotel, restaurant, or invited you to their company, but they've blocked off time and have invested time in you. So be prepared with this, that they're going to dig pretty deep. And they're probably going to ask you some situational questions. One strategy you can use with situational questions is the STAR method. You can read through that either on my website or in this presentation. Basically, it's situation, task, result, and you want something measurable. Be prepared to role play. In sales, I'll go with sales here. In sales, they may ask you to sell their product to see how well you've researched it and how well you understand it. Or they may ask you to sell your current product so that they can see what your skill set is and understanding it's transferable, as we mentioned earlier. Another example for me, when I was interviewing with for a teaching position, they asked me about classroom discipline. They said, okay, Chris, you look great on paper, but as you know and everybody else knows, it's all about classroom discipline. They said, give us an example of a time that you disciplined some students. And I just started laughing. I go, anybody who knows me knows classroom discipline has never been an issue. But I said to have some fun with you, this is what I do. I put my desk in the back of the room, and anytime students are going to misbehave, they tend to look back at the desk to see what the teacher is doing. And I was doing this, and I had 3 freshman football players were all sitting together, and they looked back at me, and I smiled at them. This was our 3rd day of teaching for that particular year, and I said, gentlemen, whatever you're doing, you're about to make a bad decision. Don't do it. And their mouths dropped, and they're like, how did you know? And they literally looked at me, they go, how did you know? And I go, guys, after doing this for 20 years, anytime the students look back at you to see what you're doing, they're getting ready to make a mistake. And so they smiled, and we built some rapport off of that. It was a good learning experience for them. But so that if you looked at a STAR interview, you'd say your situation is you got some kids ready to misbehave. The task is how do you stop it? They looked around or turned around, and because of the way I'd positioned the desk, I was able to uh, stop an issue before it even began. The paper wad was never thrown. In interviews, it's impressive if you take notes. Maybe that's the teacher and the coach in me, but I love it when I'm interviewing somebody and they pull out a pad of paper and a pencil and start writing things because I know they're paying attention, and that's somebody who presents themselves as coachable. All right, we talked about documentation in a brag book. And the cool thing about this is I was doing brag books before they were cool. My first teaching job, which was 25 years ago, on the interview, I'd actually taken a binder and put all sorts of information in it and presented it to them, telling them I want this job and this is why I want the job and these are the skills I bring. Nowadays, brag books, at least in the pharmaceutical and medical device industry, are the industry standard. Typically, I tell people get yourself a 1-inch binder, fill it up with plastic sleeves that hold documents. Your first sleeve, you should probably put at least 5 copies of your resume in case you end up with multiple people in the interview, so you can just pull out resumes and hand them to everybody. This is a place where you can keep your 30, 60, 90-day plan. You can put in your years in stack rankings. You can put in any uh, letters that you've received from people over the years. Mine is filled with newspaper articles from stories that people have done on me over the course of my career. I also have every single evaluation I've gotten for the last 24 years in there. And an unorganized brag book is a liability. It's not impressive, but an organized brag book is very powerful. What I would do is organize it and tab it. Make sure it's tabbed so you can turn to whatever information they want. I have a gazillion stories of ways people have uh, messed up interviews in ways, some of the stuff I couldn't even make up if I wanted to. Let's go through some of the things that you should do not. Don't contact managers directly without clearing it with the appropriate person. So, especially if you're working with a recruiter, when I'm working with candidates, if they reach out to a hiring manager directly, um, managers don't like that. They don't like it if they reach out. And I think, and again, I've not really dug into it with them, but I think the thought process is they're going around the chain of command. And I guess they're worried that if they hire them, they will go directly to their bosses instead of going through the chain of command. Now, I did say that you should reach out to hiring managers earlier. Now, I don't want you to get too confused. If somebody is not hiring and you're reaching out proactively, that's a good thing. But if you are in the interview process and they've put you in to interview with company XYZ, reaching out to the manager after you have the interview set or after you've entered the interview process, whether it's through HR or recruiter or whoever, you need to go through that person first. It's just the right thing to do. And I've seen it cost good people jobs in the sense that they ended up not getting moved forward. Don't let your voicemail fill up. I'm always surprised by this one is that you're interviewing, your resume's been selected, and then myself or the hiring manager calls and your voicemail is full. Um, I will probably send you a text saying, hey, your voicemail is full, but a hiring manager probably won't. I've had hiring managers say if they are out interviewing for jobs and their voicemail is full, they're concerned about how you're going to deal with customers. All right, don't leave an inappropriate voicemail greeting. Give you an example. I was working with a recent college grad a few years ago, and I don't know why, but she changed when I called her and left a voicemail, it was fine. But sometime over the weekend, her and her friends thought it would be funny, and they put something about if this is a boy, hang up because my father will find you. If this is a girl, go ahead and leave a message. And I guess they thought that was funny, but the hiring manager called me, said, Chris, we're not moving her forward. Listen to her voicemail. I go, I left the voicemail 3 days ago. And they're like, listen to it now. Don't be late to the interview. Don't skip the interview. I remember I was working with one client and we got, I think, 3 emails of people whose dogs had died or grandparents had died that night saying they couldn't make it to the interview. And this hiring manager sarcastically called me and said, I'm killing all these grandparents. I feel really bad. And I mean, things do happen occasionally, but I don't think 3 grandparents all died on the same night because people decided they didn't have enough time to prepare for their interview. So if a recruiter or HR or somebody's working with you and taking the time to do that, don't skip out on them. Make sure you're prepared. Don't chew gum in an interview. The chewing gum is a no-no. I shouldn't even have to say that one. I don't wear a lot of perfume or jewelry. You have no idea with perfume if the hiring manager has any kind of health issues. And with jewelry, it can be very distracting. And don't talk too much. It should be conversational. I have a couple hiring managers that literally, when they're doing a phone interview, they will take their watch and set it and ask a question to see how long the candidate will talk before they stop. And sometimes, sometimes maybe 5 or 6 minutes before the candidate stops to ask or re-engage the manager in conversation. So make sure that you are acting conversational. You should be listening as much as you are talking. For every interview, phone interview, video interview, face-to-face interview, close. Ask what the next steps are. Ask if the manager has any questions or concerns. This is the opportunity where you can actually save the interview because sometimes there'll be questions or concerns that they don't bring up unless you ask them. And ask for their endorsement. That will give you some indication as to whether it's a good interview or not, based on if they genuinely convey to you that they're excited to move you forward or not. So this is a chance for you to really save the interview on your close. Be transparent and be yourself. This is literally the most important thing I can tell you. I know too many, even the most talented recruiters out there, who will coach candidates to answer questions the way they think the hiring manager wants them answered. And my thought on it is it's good to be diligent, good to be prepared, it's good to understand the questions that are going to come your way. But you need to be yourself because if it's not a cultural fit for you, that's not good for anybody. So be yourself. Um, and finally, dress appropriately. There's no such thing as being too conservative. I actually get a number of people who ask me, what should I wear? And I'm just like, there's no such thing as being too conservative. Just keep that in mind. Ride-alongs. What is a ride-along? A ride-along is basically spending the day in the life of somebody who works at this organization, preferably in the role that you're interviewing for. So in the pharmaceutical and medical device sales industry, a lot of times managers will, when somebody completes the interview process, they'll send them out on what they call a ride day, where they'll ride along with a rep, see what it's like to call on the doctors, just to make sure, one final thing to make sure it's a good fit for both the individual and the company. Now, when you're doing that, treat the person that you're doing the ride along with just like you would a hiring manager. Anything you say is going to go back to the hiring manager. So don't get so comfortable that you're talking about last Saturday's party or anything like that. Some people get too comfortable after a few hours doing a ride along thinking we're buddies now and I can disclose things that probably aren't that professional. So don't do that. Also, pro tip like the with the ride along, take a handwritten thank you, and at the end of the day, give it to the person, thanking them for their time. It's so nice to win when the person you're doing the ride along to be an advocate on your behalf. So keep that in mind. Hey, hopefully you liked the video. The only thing I'm going to ask from you is that if you liked the video or learned anything from it, please click the like button and potentially subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'd like to get this information out there. Feel free to share it with friends or whoever you want to share it with. I think this video should help a number of people. Finally, when you land that awesome pharmaceutical or medical device sales job, um, post a message. Keep me informed. Let me know. I've already gotten some positive feedback from people who've watched the video, and there's only a few people who've watched it so far. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video. Good luck in your job search, and let me know which tips helped you the most. Thanks. It's nice meeting you.